Hi, it's Maya here with my top 10 favorite books of the year, and I actually did manage to get these in order, so these are pretty much in the order that I preferred. I usually can't do this, but I did it this time, so let's just get started. On number 10 I have The Raven and the Reindeer by T. Kingfisher, which is a pen name of Ursula Vernon's. And this is a retelling of the Snow Queen fairy tale, which follows the plot points of the fairy tale quite faithfully, but there's also a lesbian relationship in this one. And it's set in a sort of vaguely Scandinavian, Northern European setting. There are some Finnish words, but also some mentions of Norse gods. And I did read quite a lot of T. Kingfisher's retold fairy tales or fairy tale inspired works. I think I read 3 in 2016, and this one was my favorite, although the Beauty and the Beast retelling, Briony and Roses, was quite close to reaching this top 10 as well. The thing that Vernon does so well is this feeling of a fairy tale. It has some whimsical parts, but also some dark and creepy parts. And this one perhaps had more creepy or bloody parts than her other works, but I really enjoyed this one. And then on number 9 I have a short story, How the Marquis Got His Coat Back by Neil Gaiman. And this is a Neverwhere short story focusing on the Marquis de Carabas. And the reason why I love this is because I loved the Neverwhere book when I was a teen so much, and the Marquis was my favorite character. So it was just so great to be back in this world and hearing the Marquis speak again. Then on number 8 I have The Red Tree by Caitlin R. Kiernan, and this is a horror novel about an author called Sarah Crowe who rents out this writer's cabin in Rhode Island, and there's a lot of creepy stuff. There's a basement. There's an old manuscript that tells about these horror stories of the area, and there's a creepy red oak, and there's also what is perhaps a dog wandering the premises. And this is a quiet horror story where not a lot happens, and the focus is on the creepy atmosphere and what is going on in the main character's head. And the main character is a lesbian character, but also I think I should warn you that when the book starts, the main character is already dead. So, on number 7 I have A Stranger in Olondria by Sofia Samatar, and this one I read pretty early on in the year, and it has just stuck with me. It's about this boy who has all his life been interested in the land of Olondria, where his father goes to trade, and he has studied the language and had an Olondrian teacher. And when he is a young man, he finally gets the chance to go to Olondria. And the reason why I like this so much is the writing style. Samatar is just so great at describing things, like how it feels when you round a corner and see something unexpectedly beautiful. And there's also this weight of history that feels like this world is large, that we don't know everything about this world, that it has a rich history behind it. And this is accomplished through a lot of people telling stories in this book, and the stories that give this sense of history and life to the world. On number 6 I have A Natural History of Dragons by Mary Brennan, which is the first in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series, and it's a fantasy novel telling about this dragon naturalist called Lady Trent who is writing her memoirs, and this is her first memoir of her early years and her first dragon studying expedition. And even though I wasn't super into the plot, this book still felt like it was written for me. I love the main character, her writing voice, how she was commenting on things to her editor or commenting on things that her younger self was doing, and also giving us hints of what will happen in the future, in the future books in the series. And my favorite parts of this book were the ones that were focused on her passion on studying dragons. So now we're on to the top 5. It was really hard not to put A Natural History of Dragons in the top 5, but somehow I managed. On number 5 I have The Geek Feminist Revolution by Cameron Hurley, which is a non-fiction collection of her essays that most of them have been published on her blog. And there are essays about, for example, pop culture phenomena like True Detective, but also feminist essays, and just we learn a lot about Cameron Hurley. This was just so good, you should read it. This was pretty much the only non-fiction book that I read this year. Bad me. On number 4 I have a novelette called The Terracotta Bride by Zen Zhou, and this is a novel set in the Chinese afterlife, where the main character is sort of forced to marry a rich man. She is his second wife, but then the man also takes on a third wife who is a terracotta bride, so she's made out of terracotta. And this book was first published in the anthology Steam Powered 2 More Lesbian Steampunk, but the author herself has said that this was a bit of a failed attempt at writing steampunk, and that it's more of a gothic queer fantasy with retro-futuristic flourishes. And it was really good. It's only about 50 pages, so you should definitely read it. Some of the plot points have slipped my mind, but I remember the main things, and also just this feeling of loving reading it. So even though I have forgotten something, it's on number 4 on my list, so... On number 3, I have The Privilege of the Sword by Ellen Kushner, which is a follow-up to her book Swords Point, with some of the same characters, even though the main character is different. So in this one, Catherine, a young woman, is forced to leave her family and go live with her weird uncle who wants her to study sword fighting, and she does get into sword fighting herself. And I was just so into this book when I was reading it. It has sword fights, it has defending people's honor, it has cruel noblemen, it has eccentric noblemen, it has blind swordsmen, it has true love and sword fights, and I'm starting to sound like a Princess Bride trailer or something, but it's just really good and it makes me smile just thinking about it, so you should really read these books, guys. Also, pretty much everyone in this world is bisexual, to one degree or another. And on number 2, I have The Traitor, Boro, Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. I love this book so much that I had to go and buy my own hardcover copy because I read this from the library originally. It was so hard not to put this on number 1, but I managed to do this. This is number 2, and I already have 2 books on number 1 because I am bad. I'm cheating with this top 10. But this tells about Boro Cormorant, who lives on this island, and her country is taken over by this empire, sort of assimilated instead of forcibly taken over. And some people of the empire kill one of her dads. And Boro wants revenge, but she ends up being this imperial accountant on a faraway country. And she is sort of trying to affect change from the inside. And this is political intrigue with economical plots, because Boro is the imperial accountant, so she can do things with economics. There's also other stuff from economics, it's not just focused on that, but I have to say that those were my favorite parts. And this world is really dark, the empire is not a nice empire, they are really into eugenics and they are very much against homosexuality, and this brings a lot of trouble to Boro, and of course other characters as well. And I really can't even say one thing why I love this book so much. I loved following the main character. She was a really great character, and it's just so suspenseful. I wouldn't call this grimdark because I'm not that much into grimdark, but it's very dark and suspenseful and quite haunting. But I can't even say anymore. And then on number 1 I have 2 books because I'm cheating, and they are the 5th season and its sequel, The Obelisk Agates, the books 1 and 2 in the Broken Earth trilogy, which will be concluded in 2017, and I can't wait. This is set in a world where there are these periods of immense natural disasters, and there are also people called orogines who can control the powers of the earth, so they sort of have earth magic. So they can steal an earthquake, but they also can start one. And this is why they are mostly feared and hunted down. Origins are often killed when they are found out. But there's also this facility called the Fulcrum that takes origins in and schools them to be imperial origins that do as they are told. And if they are getting out of control, then there are guardians assigned to each one who will kill them. The world and the magic is so intriguing, and the main character is so complex. I love the main character. She is amazing. I'm rooting for her all the time. She has gone through some hard stuff. She has her dark sides, and I'm just all for her. And while this is also a great adventure and a great epic fantasy world, like so epic, like all these natural disasters make this so epic in scale, this is also a book where N.K. Jemisin manages to talk about things like systemical oppression and racism. It is so well done, it's infinitely quotable. I just find these quotes all the time about prejudice and about how people treat people who they think are not people. So those were my top 10 books I read in 2016. I'm also going to mention some comics that I enjoyed. I really am continuing to enjoy the Squirrel Girl comics from Marvel, which are just innocent fun. I was really into Lady Killer, which is this comic about a 50s housewife contract killer. The Wicked and the Divine Volume 3 was pretty good. I haven't read the fourth one yet. And then I was also really into Princess Jellyfish Volume 1, which is this soja manga about girl geeks, and that might have been even my favorite comic from this year. And also one of my favorites was this children's comic called Baba Yaga's Assistant, written by Marika McCool and illustrated by Emily Carroll. I didn't do a lot of rereading this year, but my favorite reread of the year was Taikurin Hattu by Tove Jansson or The Finn Family Moomin Troll. I reread 3 Moomin books this year, and this one was my favorite by far. So those were all my favorite reads from 2016. Were some of these your favorites as well? Please let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one.